Big fluff.
Hello, world. It's Stephanie Cmar, and I am here to tell you that I know some shit.
Exotica. Hi, everybody. I'm Joel Murphy.
And I'm Stephanie Cmar.
And this is Stephanie Knows Some Shit,
where I talk about things that I think I know, things that I've experienced, and sometimes I just bullshit. Isn't that right, Joel?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the format. So what are we going to talk about this week?
So, guys, this is a weighted topic, but it's one that I don't think I can avoid for much longer. And it's one that I am, in a weird way, very excited to talk about. And we are going to talk about drinking. I posted a picture for my birthday on Instagram. And for the first time in like 6-7 months, I actually identified with the fact that I'm a non-drinker now. And I didn't give much follow-up. I didn't give the story of how I did it, really anything. So I wanted to take this podcast to go a little further in depth, because my Instagram post made it look like rainbows and sunshine. And I don't want anybody to have the false sense that that's what it's been. But I also want to talk about the optimism that I've received from not drinking. So I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be great. One thing to note, none of us are medical specialists and none of us know what is right for you. This is my experience personally, and I just want to make sure of that, because there are so many ways to achieve a goal. And you don't have to look at just one person for a baseline. But I want to talk to you today about it, because I kind of went through a lot of those motions. AA, just cold turkey, et cetera, et cetera. So take everything that I say with a grain of salt. But I think we should be good.
I think that's great. And obviously, that post was very impactful. I know you said a lot of people reached out to you when you posted it. You got a lot of DMs. A lot of people are curious. And so I think I speak for everyone listening when I say that we appreciate you feeling comfortable enough to share this, and that's very nice, because you don't have to do that. So that's very sweet that you wanted to do it. And I think this would be a good talk for everyone to hear. We also have a guest with us, which, yeah. Do you want to introduce our guest? I think that would be interesting.
No, you introduce her. You know her better.
Yeah. We are joined by Molly Regan, who happens to be my wife, but who also is a good person. Again, none of us are experts, but is a good resource to have on for this episode, who is also going to be sharing some stuff about her own journey with deciding to stop drinking. So we appreciate having you on as well.
Oh, thank you, Joel. Thank you, Stephanie. I don't know. Should I tell a little background?
Yeah, please.
So I've actually been sober almost 2.5 years. I was a pretty heavy drinker. I know a lot of people choose, how they self-identify is very important to them. I find that for me, I do identify as an alcoholic. That I know some people don't call themselves an alcoholic. There's a lot of stigma attached to the word. I understand that. It's what works for me. Again, as you said, there's, none of us are experts. So that's just my own personal, I couldn't stop drinking until I really admitted to myself, I'm an alcoholic. And I was able to do that with the help of my husband and of a therapist. And I'm very, very proud to be 2.5 years sober and counting. So
very proud of you.
Thank you.
That is a huge, huge feat.
Yeah, thank you.
Like, yeah. And I think that's really important what you just said. We choose the words to identify ourselves. When I think what a clinician would say about me, they'd be like, you're an alcoholic. But what happened when I heard that word is it was just a negative connotation that I couldn't look past.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got one of those annoying attitudes where it's like, the grass is green on this side, the cup's always half full, whatever. So non-drinker to me isn't downplaying my problem. It just makes me feel better.
Yeah. I think if we can take a minute, because I appreciate you both being clear about like what you're comfortable being called. But just as a side note, because again, this whole podcast is going to be talking about the journey. I think if we can get to a point in our society where if someone says they don't drink, I feel like there's always like like I'm a non-drinker. I don't drink. There's like a inclination for people to want to know why. And again, I understand in this episode, we're going to be exploring that. But in life, if people don't drink, I feel like it should be totally fine to be like, I don't drink. And then you don't have to say anything else.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually tell people, like, if I can, a day before, if we're going out to eat.
Yeah.
I'm like, just so you know, I don't drink. So that they can like, I'm like, I don't care if you drink.
Yeah.
Like, at all. Truly, from the bottom of my heart, you can have 5 martinis and I'll drive you home.
Right.
It doesn't bother me, but I find that's the easiest way for the dinner table not to be awkward.
Yes.
Yeah, I think culturally, it's assumed that you would drink. So if you go somewhere and you're the person who says you're not, you're expected to offer an explanation. And
absolutely,
people shouldn't really have to offer an explanation in a group setting for not wanting to eat something, not wanting to drink something. It's a boundary. So it's unpleasant.
Yeah, Molly, you're 100%. Like, I get that people will be like, well, why? But do you want to talk about what sours a dinner table? Your journey into alcoholism.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. People don't like, I think that's the thing is they don't want the answer. They just, it doesn't make, like, they can't just I think that's just the normalization of that drinking is going to be a part of dinner or whatever. Of just like, why? And it's like, well, do you want to go down this? Well, now it's nice because now you can just have this episode and you can just send them a link.
My best friend Lindsay and I constantly talk. She's like, if you were at a party and they were doing cocaine and you didn't want to, nobody's like, why don't you want to do cocaine?
Yeah.
Or why won't you eat these snails?
Yeah.
People just assume. They're like, you're not interested.
I pictured both of those happening in the same bathroom. Like there's a bathroom where they're doing bumps of coke and eating snails at the same time.
I mean, what a party. But super interesting. And we're going to talk a little bit about those things that to a non-drinker is very common sense, but maybe as a friend, a supportive friend, I'm not shitting on you. Like, you don't know. You don't know what's going on. You don't know how sensitive the topic is. But little triggers that happen. Maybe not triggers to drink, but triggers to feel awkward and uncomfortable and like it's not worth it. There's just all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So do we want to, like you said, you made this Instagram post, you kind of, if I'm not mistaken, that was sort of the first public declaration of this. But yeah, do we want to jump back a little? Do we want to talk about, this journey, I guess, like where, you started to make the decision to not drink?
I would love to. So the turning point was in August 2021, but before that, I was drinking so much. I'm a compulsive binge drinker. So if I drink on a Friday night, I probably won't stop until Monday or Tuesday. And it's because I struggle with diagnosed anxiety, diagnosed depression. And my favorite way of not dealing with it is drinking.
Yeah.
So I spent the summer in pretty rough shape. You couldn't necessarily tell physically, but I wasn't going to work when I should have. I was unreliable. It was a fiasco. Mm-hmm. And I also had this anxiety that just weighed on my chest like 10,000 pounds. So I made it through, obviously, still standing here. I had my best friend fly out here from Chicago. She was coming to spend the weekend. She hadn't seen the house. It was going to be awesome. She got here, and for a day and a half, I held it together. Didn't drink. We did everything. I wasn't a person that needed the alcohol. It was actually once I started drinking that it became so important to me.
Yeah.
But I had invited a bunch of close friends over for like a summer barbecue, summer get together. We had drank the night before. And I woke up that morning and took a shot of Fireball. And then I probably took like 2 or 3 more. And by the time the guests got there, I didn't know up from down.
Oh.
I actually put myself to bed hours before anybody else left. And these were people, David's friends, but not David's friends, if you get my drift. Lindsay had no idea what was going on. So she asked David, and she was pissed. Like, I'm using like a nice voice. She was like, "What is this?" And David was like, "You have no idea." And he filled her in. I woke up at 2:00 in the morning, and she had rebooked her flight for the next day. She was supposed to be out here for another couple days. And I knew at that moment, this was so far out of my control. So far out of my control. So the next day I drank. Tried to get through it. Tried to do what I normally do. But there was something in my soul. I was like, I'm going to lose her. I'm going to lose everything. That drunkenly, I bought a plane ticket to Chicago. And I stayed with her family for 6 days. Dried out, kind of got my shit together. Came back home. And I started going to AA. I was like, I don't know about this, but like, I really think I need some structure. This will be great. Stayed sober. And I went to AA for, I think it was just under 4 months. And this is why we say that we're not medical professionals. Like, we're not. I I loved the time that I was there. I really appreciated the vulnerability, like hearing people's stories, et cetera, et cetera. But it wasn't my answer or solution. Unfortunately, I relapsed in, I think, November and again in December. And then the last time was February. But I've started to pave my own path in trying to be a non-drinker. I will always be an alcoholic. I will always have an issue with it. But I started putting together things at work. Holly Whitaker's book, How to Quit Like a Woman, changed my life. She's the woman that uses the term non-drinker. And I was actually talking to her and she was like, it's an esteemed word. And I was like, yes, it is. Like, really amazing. I do not think about drinking very much. I just have to be sure that I don't get triggered, because the second I can have a sip and be fine, but the second that I have a cocktail, a glass of wine, it's very hard for me to turn back. The process has been enlightening. It's been hard. It has been shameful at points, but the quality of life that I have now compared to where I was is, I mean, you can't put them together. Every day drinking, I woke up with fear of what I was going to do. And as a non-drinker, I don't have that necessarily anymore. I still worry about everything, but I've taken out this anxiety producing product. I feel like I've become a better friend, a better wife, a better daughter, and a better sister, because I now have at least some sliver of reliability that's very important to me.
I'm curious, and I don't know, maybe this is a big question. I don't know how difficult this is to put into words, but I'm curious if maybe you can speak to, what do you feel shifted? Like, do you think there was something internal? Do you think there was something in like your thought process? Like, I mean, you talked about, I guess, like the your friend coming out and that changing, but what do you feel like changed? Like, what made, like, it was just seeing it from her perspective, like it felt internally? I'm just curious.
I think, Joel, that I felt so shameful for putting her in that situation that I needed to evaluate what I had done.
Okay.
It was just, everybody talks about that snap of a moment that they experience, whether not having to do with drinking, could do with anything. I certainly experienced that.
And then, like,
and thank God I did.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say too. Like, was there any point, did it feel like a relief? Like, did it feel like,
No,
it was just, yeah.
It did not feel like a relief.
Okay.
It felt like an incredible amount of work needed to be done.
Okay.
It was stressful. It was sad. It was all of these things, but I was like, if I don't get this together, if I don't take control of my own life, everything else is going to just crash and burn. And I was at a point in my drinking. So when you drink, obviously you get hungry and you eat all this food. I hit especially since people will be able to reference it. On Top Chef, I was about 215 pounds, you know, and I wore that weight, which is a lot of extra weight for my body, as like a cloak of proving how miserable I was. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you can't see in my brain? Like, look at my body. Like, obviously something's going wrong. And then I was able to shed 55 pounds from that, which took, before anybody's like, oh, I'll quit drinking and lose 50 pounds. You will not. You have to do like a shit ton of work too. But I wanted subconsciously my body to represent my mind. Very important to me.
Yeah.
You know, the whole thing is like, no matter what, I can't stop saying it's hard. It's hard, it's hard, it's hard. But the benefits, the life that I've experienced for 6 months, and that's including these relapses, you know what I mean? I got my shit together after I did it, was very important.
Yeah. Molly, do you want to talk a little bit about for you how it was, or anything? I don't know if you would like to share whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, it's first, like, thank you for being so candid, because I think people who maybe haven't gone through the process of like quitting any sort of substance, they just kind of see it as like a binary, like your life is worse and then it's better. And it's like, well, but also there are reasons that you're using this substance. So like once you take that away, all of these things now exist. Like very much
boiled to the top.
Yeah. So it doesn't just get better. Like it's hopefully going to be better, but there's a lot of ugliness and mess, and there's a reason a lot of people don't go into recovery. Like if it was easy, people would do it, you know? So I think that's really important, especially to sort of give a lot of empathy to people who are still actively using substances.
Absolutely.
Is to go like,
absolutely,
you know, like it's really hard. Like if it was
using is the coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And that's something that I and Molly, you probably understand tenfold.
Yeah.
That is how you deal with it.
Yeah. So
and to break that, especially when it's like, I don't know the word to use, but like mind displacement, like you're able to take yourself out of one place using and go to another place.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's very important to sort of emphasize that, especially if maybe, well, I don't want to speak for other people, but just to garner that empathy, just to be like, look, obviously in an ideal world, nobody would be in the position to abuse substances. Or if somebody is, they would be able to, you know, recover, you know, easily and when they need to.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more complicated than that. I think for me, I had known for a number of years that I had a problem with alcohol. I had kind of slowly started pulling back my drinking. Like there would be longer periods of time I would go without drinking. But then when I would drink, the way I would talk about it is sort of like I have like a broken mechanism in my brain of just sort of like, I can't drink just one drink. It just doesn't work. Mm-mm. Like once I'm drinking all night. Like, I'm just
I said to somebody, it's nothing or blackout.
and that I'm very much the same way. And that is, that's very much, it's a genetics thing. It's a way I was socialized. It's, there's, you can't, I don't know. I can't teach myself how to drink properly. Like, it's just ingrained in my brain chemistry. But I would go these longer stretches of time, including sometimes like months. But then when I went out and drank, I would be up all night just drinking. And that was it. That was the night.
Because it's kind of like a celebration for staying sober for all those months. You're like, I did this, so.
Well, for me, it would be, there's always a reason to drink. If I wanted to drink, there's a reason. I have to. Well, I'm so sad. Oh, I gotta drink. Oh my God, something great happened. Oh, I gotta drink. Oh, I'm so angry. Well, of course you gotta drink about it. Like, I mean, it was just,
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter. If this is what I wanted, there's always a reason to justify it. But I do remember the last time I drank, and it's really, it was such a mundane thing because I drank because I had been on campus and I was supposed to take a test, and I needed, I had accommodations to take tests. I needed like longer test times. So my professor was supposed to like set up with our school so that I could go to like another part of campus to take my test. And she just didn't arrange it. So I ended up having this whole thing to take a test, and I was going back and forth to different buildings on campus and just getting like crazy frustrated. And it took so long to do this. And at some point during this whole ordeal, I just decided, like, I'm going to go to a bar and like get a drink after this.
It's such a switch.
Yeah, decision's been made. You can't take that back. And I had, I had texted Joel, like, man, I'm going through so much. This is so annoying. Like, we got to go out and get a drink after this. Joel is not really a drinker, pretty much at all. But he was like, I guess if you really want to. Once I had made that decision, the way I describe it is it felt like fire in my chest. Like, not like heartburn, but almost like I'm going to go into battle. Like, I must have this. Then, go to the bar. We have, I'll be frank, I don't even remember if Joel got anything to drink. He might have had like one. But like, I'd order several. Then we go home. I, buy, a pack of cigarettes, because I would always, if I was going to drink, I'd buy a pack of cigarettes. Go home. I drink more. I don't remember that night being notably different from any other night I would drink. Like, there wasn't anything exceptional about that night. But it was yet another night of just, okay, you made the decision and now this is just what the night is. And the next morning, I wake up and I feel like shit, and, I'm hungover, and for me, it's just this, I go from the day before getting that, like, warrior fire feeling in my chest of, like, yeah, this is what you're doing tonight, to feeling just this terrible shame spiral of just, like, why? You did all of this because you were annoyed with, your community college administrators? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, and as I'm, kind of just, walking around, like, trying to, handle my headache, like, Joel ends up saying, what nobody had ever said to me before, which was just, I love you, but every time you drink, it really makes me anxious. And it hit me that I had always viewed my drinking as being sort of self-abuse, of just like, well, what does it matter? Like, I'm just doing these terrible things to myself. And that was kind of the first time someone who I knew cared about me just went, well, actually, this is really hurting me. Like, you're doing an action that makes me very anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of viewed it as like, oh, you've now told me that something I'm doing is causing you emotional harm. So if I continue to do this, knowing that information, well, to me, in my mind, that's kind of like emotionally abusing you. I have this information now. So now it's my responsibility to go do something about it. That's a pretty serious, well, I'll say that's a gift you gave me, basically. And I need to go do something with it. And I did. And I went and told my therapist, and basically was like, I don't, like...
Did your therapist have any idea? Now I'm just curious. That's not...
I mean, my therapist, I had told her, like, I would tell her things like, based on previous, like, some, mental health things I had brought up, I'd be like, oh, I got too drunk last night and I don't feel good about it, but I think this is what's going on. And so it would sort of be like, okay, well, but that's not good. So let's try to deal with this. So when I came in and was just...
I've had a lot of therapists who I am not honest with until my most recent one. That's why I ask.
Oh.
Like, I can not lie, just not tell all the truth.
Yeah. I
like, this wasn't drinking related, but the therapist that I see now, which I really love, when I first started seeing her, I didn't tell her stuff because I'd never had good experiences with therapists and I had never really clicked with them. And we reached a point where I would talk to her and she'd ask me how I was doing and I'd be like, oh, I'm fine. And this went on for like a while. And then she was kind of like, well, you come in here, it kind of seems like you're okay. Like, I don't think you need to keep coming to therapy. And that was me being like, oh God, no, let's actually...
like, oh shit.
I actually have to tell you things now.
No, there's stuff. I promise there's stuff.
Yeah, I'm a mess. I just haven't been telling you. So you're like, yeah, I had to...
I think it's super interesting because you hire this person to help you. And then, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, this family stuff's really hard, but you skate around the fact that you're blackout drunk and just came out of it like an hour before you got to their office.
I definitely did that when I was younger.
Okay.
When I was younger and very, very actively, super heavily drinking all the time, I did that. I think I was more able to be honest with my therapist recently because I was kind of like, I had a much safer, like, landing place, like, at home. Mm-hmm. So, like, I could kind of divulge more things.
I think that's such a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah, thank you.
You are so much more open and honest. Not even when you've hit one notch above rock bottom, but when you've created a base to feel safe in.
Yeah, like that was a huge part of it. And so much of that really does go to Joel be like, and go to Joel, go to a lot of time, go to like, it's not one person, one partner. It's a whole ecosystem. And I've been very lucky to be a part of this time and place in this ecosystem to support that recovery.
Well, yeah, I think that's important. And I think, Stephanie, you kind of touched on that too, is like, there's often like this kind of inciting incident that maybe makes you want to change and stop drinking. But yeah, it's never a linear process. And even as you've kind of said, when you decided to stop drinking, even that wasn't exactly linear. It's just sort of a gradual, things come together, you decide to make the decision, and then, it's the credits don't roll. It's not a movie. It's still, you still have to like every day make the decision.
Work. And I think something that needs to be made very clear is I don't have a day that I don't think about drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In some sense, it might be I want to get trashed. It might be one cocktail would be so cute if I had it at like the York River Landing, or who knows what it is. And, you're married to Joel, I'm married to David. But the reason the flick that got me to quit drinking was a friend. And, it's really great because it made me evaluate most of my friendships.
Yeah.
And almost compartmentalize. What are they there for? What are their skills? What do they bring to it? And my friends who I absolutely love and adore that can't handle such a heavy topic, they're good. Like I don't feel obligated to wax poetic to them about my problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's, I think it's one of those hard things to kind of evaluate, like, not, I think when you're trying to sort of, I don't know, I want to say, recover. I was going to be like, do I say heal? Do I say this? But recover is what I'm talking about. And then realize you had these relationships with all of these people, friends, family, everything, while you were actively drinking or actively using. And then you go, oh, this humongous part of my experience is now leaving. Well, that reevaluates my relationship with all these people. Or at least for me, it has. And then go,
for sure.
Okay, well then what does this mean? Sometimes it might mean this relationship just isn't going to work. I think a lot more times it means this is going to get a little more complicated and we might have to figure out, reevaluating some boundaries with people. Like, maybe we don't go to these places together, or maybe we try to figure out new places to go, or maybe we can go to these places, but could we make some different accommodations? Like,
For sure. Like I told you before we started recording, typically, whether it be for an event through my catering company or with friends, I tell them a day before we're supposed to get together, because there's such a stigma that you have to drink, and one that I completely understand. I mean, I've been the person being like, why don't you drink? Mm-hmm. But I like to get it all out on the table so that the temptation's not there. And I don't care if people drink around me at all.
Yeah.
Have at it. I'll drive you home. Like, does not bother me. But I do I'm very cognizant of the fact that I am impressionable.
Yeah.
And impulsive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's good to be aware of that stuff. And I think sometimes, especially around alcohol, because it's so ingrained in our culture
everywhere,
that we kind of, and again, in my experience, kind of look at people like, oh, you can't be around alcohol? God, okay, you're weird. And it's like, well,
Weird.
okay, but let's flip that around. Someone simply saying, I can't be around that because I'm taking care of myself is a really mature, responsible person. Like, they're not saying anything bad about you. They're not telling you not to do it. They're simply saying, this is how I take care of myself. That's a very self-aware person. Let them be that, you know?
Yeah, I think it's just because when you take this step back, like it's so ingrained in Super Bowl commercials. There's like wine mom culture. There's all the, like, you can go to like a Home Goods or whatever, and there's a million plaques of, like sort of memes and jokes about drinking. It's just a very normal thing. And I would imagine, Stephanie, too, like having worked in the restaurant industry for so long, certainly servers want you to buy alcohol because that's going to make the check more expensive. That's how a restaurant's going to make money, like kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, you go out any social situation, it's kind of understood that there's probably going to be alcohol there. So that is why I think that you have to actively warn people. Like Molly and I met doing improv. That's all in bars and clubs a lot of times,
We literally got together because I offered him a drink.
Right.
Like, that's how we got together.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Which is funny because, again, Joel never drinks.
Yeah. That's because she was cute. I mean, that's
all that was.
Yeah, that makes everything easier.
I also walked outside and smoked a cigarette with her, which I do not smoke cigarettes, but I was like, I want to keep talking to her. So, like,
it's funny what attraction will make you do.
Yeah, 100%.
No, it's really funny to look back on, because now I'm just like, it's so weird to remember I think 2 occasions early on in us dating where I'm just like, I got Joel to smoke a cigarette because I was hot.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
I love that. Going back really quickly to restaurant culture. So I just want to be candid and honest. When I worked in restaurants, I definitely drank too much, but it was not an issue necessarily. So I'm not the best to give advice on that because I drank too much, but it was okay. It was manageable. Still went to work every day. Still did everything I needed to do.
Well, again, I mean, I feel like when you're in a any sort of culture, any sort of subculture where drinking is very prominent, it can become really hard to actually gauge if your own drinking. We talked before the show, like I briefly worked as a waitress. I can remember going into the kitchen and like literally seeing cooks drinking, like, and just being like, is this like, you're on the job? And then being like, we're cooks. I'm like, wait, what? And then
there's something very acceptable about it.
Yeah. For myself, I was very ingrained in like local indie music. A lot of drinking in, local indie like music culture back on the East Coast. So I'm like, well, I don't have a drinking problem because everyone's doing this, and I'm 20. Like, just, this is, who's going to tell me I'm an alcoholic? Like, come on. Like, I'm with a bunch of like 20-year-old musicians. Obviously I did, but it can become very hard to gauge your own consumption when you're a member of a subculture that like consumes a lot. Like, that kind of warps the view.
Absolutely. And I think what you're saying right now is age does play a huge factor. Mm-hmm. I turned 37 and I'm obviously like so much more mature than I was when I was 26. and I've experienced a lot of shit. You know, age helped me. I don't think if my problem had gotten as bad as it did when I was 26, that I would be able to healthfully identify it.
I'm curious, and you kind of you mentioned that like AA wasn't for you, and I know you mentioned the Quit Like a Woman book, but what do you think has been the most helpful for you, or what has really worked for you as you've been?
It was actually an experience. So David, my husband, was very nervous to leave me at home because I can get into trouble so fast, your mind would spin. And the first day he had to go to work, he left me at home alone, and he came home and I was sober. And I didn't assume there would be a sense of pride with that because I was just like kind of keep, rugging along. But that was the moment where I was like, oh shit, this isn't just about changing my life. This was about changing our lives, changing his life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really like a moment where I was like, and I'm older. Like I should be able to be left alone in my house. I own half of it, but I wasn't.
But that is kind of the big thing is like, because you were by yourself. And so it's your decision to make, like you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's no right and wrong. I don't want this to come off as black and white because none of it is black and white. My experience is not like yours. If you are identifying a problem within yourself, it is 100% up to you for if you want to address it. I just started to see so much positivity though.
Yeah.
And it was positivity that I was seeing sober. And that's a wild ride.
Yeah. I'm curious too, because you kind of mentioned, that it's not universal. Everybody's situation is going to be unique to them. But I know you said, I don't remember if you said this on the air or before we started recording, but you mentioned a lot when you made the post on your birthday, a lot of people reached out to you. You got a lot of DMs. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you kind of noticed? Was there like a theme? Was there like something that a lot of people either were asking you or like bringing up, or like, is it just because we have this venue? Is there anything that came up a lot in those messages that maybe you want to talk about here while we're talking about it?
Yeah, two things. A lot of people were like, this could be my eye-opening moment. If that is what it provided to you, I will talk to you. No matter what you need. No matter what you need. I am here for you because it's recent. It's very recent that I went through all of this. And the other thing was just like, how did you get sober? And again, I went to AA for a couple months. I really liked it, realized it wasn't my thing. The greatest thing about AA, and Molly had said this earlier to me, AA is free.
Mm-hmm.
AA is accessible. AA fosters a community of people that care about your well-being. And for the time that I was there, that's what I experienced. It was really important. It was really important because I do not think I would have gotten sober without it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's just certain parts where I was like, oh, I don't think this is for me. But, having a resource that does not cost you money, there are so many meetings you can go really any time of day or night, especially if you're on Zoom. And what I loved about AA the most was hearing other people's stories. And it wasn't about hearing their pain. It was about hearing their triumphs.
And it's just, I mean, I would imagine you feel less alone. Like, you know that there are other people who are experiencing what you're experiencing. And again, as we've been saying so much too, because there's so many things are built around, having beers, going to bar. It's the one place that you can go be with other people and everyone is on the same page.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that I like to do with AA was I like to go to these 6 or 7 o'clock meetings at night, because it's like the bewitching hour of getting in trouble.
Yeah.
That was just a really good time. It was a strategy of mine.
Yeah. When I know you mentioned the quit like a woman. I also know that Molly recommended a great book to me that I read it kind of in preparation of this too, which is Mary Carr has a book called Lit that is, if people are curious, if people want to know someone else's journey. I mean, one, she's a phenomenal writer, but two, it's literally just her journey. And she talks a lot about going to AA and that and her experiences and sort of the things that were hang up to her, the things that, she didn't like about it, the things that she did like about it. And it's just a very honest, account by an amazing writer of their experience that I would definitely recommend to people too.
Yeah, one of the things, because I read Lit within the first 3 months of quitting. And one of the things that I actually experienced when I first quit was just this, the emotional levee just broke. All of these things that I had been drinking to forget, I unloaded in my brain. And I felt this kind of intense, sort of dysregulation where it was just, I would just start randomly crying, just years and years of emotional overload. And I couldn't really explain it to anyone. I had a therapist, but just this kind of what is this? And I did not go to AA. I had my own reasons for that. I did see my therapist. I do think that it's a good idea to have some sort of support, whether that's a group or a therapist or something. Again, we're not medical professionals, but it is something I would generally say for anyone is have some support. But one of the things that you had said that was really great was just having people to kind of share their stories. And that's actually one of the reasons I really love that book, because I had already really loved Mary Carr's writing. And one of the things she's great at is she's really great at writing these memoirs that are, everyone in them are three-dimensional characters, including herself. She is not necessarily the hero of her stories. She's just, it's just her perspective, but she's going to tell you everything. So when it comes to talking about her alcoholism, she's not going to go, well, here's everything I did to conquer it. She's going to tell you what it meant to be an alcoholic. She's going to really divulge all of this. And a lot of that shame that is really hard to talk about, especially in those first few months, she's put it all down in this book. And when I was just so overwhelmed with these feelings and I couldn't really get a hold of them, I could open this book and read her telling me exactly what that was. And it was incredibly cathartic. And so important to me to just go, oh, thank God I'm not a crazy person. She's done this, and she's been sober for, God, maybe 30 years. She's been sober a long time. She's made it.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah. But there were a couple of things I wanted to say, which was, I'm a big proponent of, maybe this is just me, but actively seeking out non-alcoholic drinks that are tasty and like pleasurable. And I know we kind of, we had mentioned this of not being fans of the term mocktail.
Yeah.
Mocktail.
Yeah.
The worst.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe some people are. I personally am not a fan. I know for myself that things that are meant to look or appear or taste alcoholic without alcohol is for me a big trigger. So I just avoid it. I had a friend who offered me, it was like a drink that was like made with hops but didn't have alcohol, and it tasted enough like beer that I was like, no, this isn't good for me. But I started going back and drinking like Fanta. I was just like, you know what's really good? Lemonade. Like, we don't like I don't care. I'm an adult. I fucking love lemonade. Like, I love cold.
Yes.
Also, it's established on the show we are pro Skittle water. Oh,
Yeah.
Stephanie knows some shit.
Skittle water.
Like kind of just being like, alcohol isn't the end all be all of beverages. There's a lot of really good drinks that aren't like alcoholic beverages. If you're throwing a party, stock some. People like to drink non-alcoholic beverages. It's a nice way to accommodate.
It's so true.
Yeah.
To accommodate your friends who don't drink, whether or not they have, you know, a substance abuse problem. Like, sometimes people just don't want to drink alcoholic
Some people
beverages.
have self-control. They're like, I've had 2 cocktails. Now I'm going to move on to something non-alcoholic because I don't want to black out. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I used to watch people like that, and I was like, teach me your ways.
Yeah, how do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
But there is one other thing I wanted to say that I've found is that when you talk about like people celebrating their triumphs, there's so much positivity that can come with making the like a change and like stopping drinking if that's something you choose to do. And there's a lot that we focus on like, you know, physical health, and, you know, there's obviously like improving relationships and things. One of the things that I've found that I really have delighted in is the improved like quickness in my brain function, which was not something I necessarily expected, but is very real. Because when you are drinking heavily, your brain is slowing down. And finding things that are really important to you or important to me that require sort of quick thinking and a lot of cognitive focus has been something I've really latched onto to
Love that.
to keep me sober. So it's very, very niche for me. But as a philosophy major, one thing I will actually do, I actually did this to celebrate 2 years sober, is I would go and do like symbolic logic homework. And the reason I would do it is I would go, there's literally no way I could do this if I was still drinking. This is only possible because I'm sober. That's very niche, but the reason
Hey, girl, you live that life.
Exactly. Thank you. But the reason I bring it up is to go, there's kind of an abstract celebration of going, you know, it's a positive change, but how is it really positive for you specifically in your life?
Yeah.
Find that and then really revel in it.
Find your personal symbolic logic, whatever that may be for you.
Find your proof.
Absolutely. And you know, one thing that we did not talk about that I think's just important. Some people can drink.
Mm-hmm.
And for everybody that can drink, this is not the podcast for you. This episode is not for you. I just wanted to put that out there because I don't think alcohol's the devil. it just is when it is directly related to myself. So I just wanted to say that because it's really easy to say, well, nobody can do this. Dude, if you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, my dad owned a bar when I was a teenager. I worked in a brewery at one point. Yeah, I certainly think like none of us are lecturing anyone or coming down on any of this stuff. It's just, yeah, it's okay for some people. Other people, no. So that's okay. You know, that this podcast is hopefully for people that, you know, are, you know,
want to hear.
Well, I know we're running out of time, but is there anything else that you wanted to say about this or anything that we didn't cover?
No, I guess Molly, thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I think it's so interesting to have multiple perspectives on what could be identified as one problem, you know? So I think that this has just been amazing. And I hope that we answered some of the questions that needed to be answered. If you have more questions, don't hesitate to DM Stephanie Knows Some Shit on Instagram. We will get back to you in rapid fashion. Just trying to solve things, because once I became sober, something very important to me was helping others.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that pain.
Yeah, and you said thanks to Molly, but obviously thanks to you as well. That both of you. I think there is power in sharing these stories, and it helps people feel less alone, and it's a brave thing to talk about it, because I know that can be tough. So I think we all appreciate you both coming on and talking about your experiences.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think this was good. And congrats to both of you. It's a big thing. And you're both great, and I'm happy that you're both in my life. So thank you.
We're lucky to have you.
Yeah. Do you want to say the thing, Stephanie?
I'm looking for it.
I think it would be something about questions, and if you know with the questions.
All right. All right, guys, if you're confused, we probably are too, but together we can figure it out.
There it is. Stephanie Knows Some Shit is hosted by Stephanie Cmar and me, Joel Murphy, and produced by me. If you enjoyed the show, give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, and instead of a review, tell us about a meal that you ate or made recently. We'd love to read about it.
We Have to Ask. It's a podcast where we answer the question, are you going to eat that?
What will you leave behind?
Why get out of bed?
Will you be our neighbor?
I'm Marty.
And I'm Jonathan.
We're two hosts.
Infinite universes.
We have to ask.
New interviews every Tuesday.
Find us on iTunes or online at wehavetoask.com, or with the other great podcasts on the Peaksloft Network at peaksloft.com.